Matter of fact. Water, agua, H2O,
L'chaim.
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 It wets your whistle. Oh, Diana, you need something to wet your whistle.
Excellent. I'm gonna get a glass of water.
Yes. But, oh, we already have 44 people. Wow. Oh, Eric arrived.
Shabbat shalom.
Plus more of the devil in
Honey,
on
how do you
Facebook.
see every?
Can you hear us? So listen how this goes. It goes like this.
Well, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I just want you to know, the people who are in the sanctuary, even with your masks on, we can see you. And it's amazing to see you here. And I'll say to the people who are at home or joining us from somewhere else than the sanctuary, we can still feel you. And I'll also say that we really want to see you too. So we're working it out. We're figuring this out, and we can hardly wait to be able for you to enjoy being at home, but for us to be able to see you and interact with you because we miss you and we love you. I'll say that today I was in the suburbs for something. And as I was driving back to Chicago, I don't know if it's because right now it's like that there's that beautiful peak point in the fall where you see all the changes of colors of the trees. But I feel like we're a little past that. And so now we're starting to see some of those trees go bare, and we're seeing some of that. So I don't know if that's what it was, or if it was because it was a little bit rainy and gloomy. But I was just thinking about how much this is a time where we all could use a little bit of comfort. It's been a tough go. And, did it feel like I said it like in the least? You're like, yeah, you don't know how tough it's been. And I'll just say that, to be able to have our community for this source of comfort is beautiful. I also love that we have the wisdom of the Torah, and that really one of my very favorite passages of the entire Torah is in this week's parashah, in this week's Torah portion, where we hear that Rebekah and Isaac, they came back finally to the land of Canaan, the land where his parents had traveled to and laid down their roots. And after his mother had died, that Isaac was able to take Rebekah to the tent of Sarah, to the tent of his mother. And there he was able to feel love, and it was there that he was comforted. I love that feeling of that even in a place, like a very specific place, we can find comfort and we can find love. And so I invite you on this Shabbat maybe to go back to a memory where you had that feeling in a place of just feeling comforted and loved. Maybe it was even in a conversation that you had this week with someone that just touched off something where you just felt like, yeah, that feels love. That feels comforting. I love that tonight we have our extraordinary musicians back with us, Ethan and Hannah. Welcome back from the honeymoon. You know that you get to have challah and honey for the next year. No salt with the challah, with honey for this entire year. And Minkyu, how wonderful, wonderful to be with you on this Shabbat. Cantor, I don't have to tell you what an incredible pleasure it is to get to lead this Shabbat service with you. But Rabbi Singer, it's so wonderful to have you back from San Francisco. Can you just show people thumbs up, thumbs down, kacha kacha? It was a good trip. And I know that everybody in the congregation just went like this, like, it's so good to have you back. Yes. And so on this Shabbat, may we find this comfort, this love, this sense of community. And may we then be able to appreciate the light of Shabbat. And so I invite you to say to your neighbors, those around you or those around you in Zoom, to say Shabbat Shalom, to greet each other. As we invite now some very special people to come to the Bima, because we have a great celebration tomorrow as Arden becomes a bat mitzvah. So we invite her parents, Jody and Eric, to join us here, as well as her siblings, Bella and Emmett, to join us here on the Bima. Oh, Arden, it's wonderful to get to celebrate with you. We turn in our prayer books to page 120. Perfect. Just go right over to the candles. Bring in this light of Shabbat. So we'll circle these candles, we'll light them and circle them 3 times, bringing in all of the holiness of Shabbat in these moments.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של שבת.
Amen. And Arden, as you come now to lead us in the Kiddush and Mazel Tov, this wonderful family, we turn to page 123. And what I love, Arden, about what's going to happen tomorrow as you become Bat Mitzvah is you're going to be creating that kind of moment of love and comfort that your whole family is going to come back to as a precious memory for years and years, and for you, a lifetime to come. We now, as we turn to page 123, we rise for our Kiddush.
Ready?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pari hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'ratzon hinayimanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit. Kihu Yom Tahirat Lemikra Kodesh Zeher Litziat Mitzrayim Kivanu Vaharta Ve'otanu Kidashta Mikol Ha'amim Shabbat Kodshecha Ve'ahava U'ratzon Inhaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
L'chaim and Mazel Tov.
Thank you,
Arden, we're so excited. And you can even take that prayer book with you if you'd like.
Yeah. Good job, sweetie.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. Page 138, as we're seated, we find the words of Lecha Dodi, this prayerful poem written in the 16th century that still speaks to us today for how to welcome in Shabbat with joy as a Sabbath bride.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nikavela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nikavela. Shamua b'zachor b'dibor echad yishme'anu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad l'shem u'tiferet v'li tfilah lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nikavela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nikavela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mekor habracha merosh mikedem nefsucha sof ma'aseh v'machashava tefila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nikavela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nikavela. Hitoreri, hitoreri, Shiva orech umiori, uri, uri, shirdaveri, Kivod Adonai alayach nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nikavela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nikavela.
We rise and face the entrances of our homes and the sanctuary as we welcome in the Sabbath bride.
Holy v'shalom ateret bala גם בשמחה ובתוך עולם, תוך אמוניה סגולה, בואי חלה לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שמיים נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שמיים נקבלה.
As we turn to page 146 for the Baruch Hu, if you were standing, you remain so for our call to worship.
Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai.
You can be seated as we turn to page 150 and we feel this abundant love, this everlasting love around us, within us, that divine love with Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Torah u'mitzvot Hukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Alkein Adonai Eloheinu b'shofenu U'kumeinu nasiach b'chukecha V'nizmach b'divrei Torah U'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed Yihem chayeinu Me'orech yameinu U'vahem negei yomam v'layla Negei yomam v'layla V'ahavtecha al tasir Mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohel amo Yisrael.
We turn to page
152. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha v'ayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha Uv'lachtecha v'derech, uv'shokbecha uv'tumecha, uv'shartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uv'isharecha, leman tizkeru ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Amen. As we turn now to page 158, we see there the words of Micha Mocha. And with them, then we are reminded that in the beginning of Genesis, we had a lot of journey to get to a place of comfort and love. And that journey went back and forth from Canaan to then Haran, and Haran to Canaan, back and forth again and again. And by the end of Genesis, we see that we are going down to Egypt. And yet we see that in the beginning of Exodus, what do we need to do to find comfort and love? But to be able to go back to that place where Isaac experienced it for the first time in that tent of Sarah. And so we know that sometimes that journey toward comfort and love requires a trek. And we have that trek toward comfort, toward love, toward freedom with the Micha Mocha.
Lai 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 mi hamno khavai limadonai mi hamno khana bakorat norat hilo to seifala norat hilo to seifala ماخوت خارا و بانخا وكيان نتمو شوميان زيليان نو بيامرو زيليان نو بيامرو أدوناي كيمو ليولاماي أدوناي كيمو ليولاماي يا لاي 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 لاي
We read together on the bottom of page 161. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. Page 164, we rise for our tefillah.
Adonai, Ananana sifatai tita, Ananana ufi agid tehilatecha, Ananana Adonai, Ananana sifatai tita, Ananana ufi agid tehilatecha, Ananana Adonai, Ananana sifatai tita, Ananana ufi agid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, Umei Vigula Livnei V'neihem, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח מוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ורחמים רבים, צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך על גבורות, ומי דומה מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
We continue now in silent prayer, and we have an invitation to that silent prayer by Mary Oliver. Can you imagine, for example, what the trees do not only in lightning storms or the watery dark of a summer night or under the white nets of winter, but now and now and now, whenever we're not looking? Surely you can't imagine they stand there looking the way they look when we're looking. Surely you can't imagine they don't dance from the root up, wishing to travel a little, not cramped so much as wanting a better view or more sun, or just as vividly more shade. Surely you can't imagine they just stand there, loving every minute of it, the birds or the emptiness, the dark rings of the years slowly and without a sound thickening, and nothing different unless the wind, and then only in its own mood, comes to visit. Surely you can't imagine patience and happiness like that. Or maybe you can. We take some time to imagine ourselves surrounded by love and comfort during these moments of silent prayer. And when you're finished with your personal prayer, please be seated.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו Shalom Roma, Uyase Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel, Ve'imnu lai, lai.
I don't know about you, but there are times where when I've been down or ill, where I just want to see a sign, just a sign somewhere to tell me that things are going to get better. And I look for them in different places. Sometimes I'll look for them in nature, like, just like a bird flying somewhere, like, oh, that feels like, okay, hopeful, or a butterfly, or sometimes just being able to have just that kindest gesture of somebody locking eyes with me and just kind of like nodding like they get it somehow. And I'll say that what I love about this week's Torah portion is that when Abraham sent a servant to go and find a wife for his son Isaac, that servant looked for a sign. And what was it that was going to tell that servant that actually things were going to be bright for the Jewish people, at least for a time, and God willing, for a long time to come? What was that sign? That sign was kindness. What did he need to be able to see that this was the right wife for Isaac? Somebody who would run to him and see what he needed. Somebody who would make sure not only to care for him, but for his whole family, for his whole flock. And I'll tell you that I think sometimes as we sing the Mishabera, and we pray for people who are in need of healing, well, maybe for them, we could be that sign of hope that they need. Not that they're going to be cured, but they are going to find comfort. There are going to be some moments of release. That's healing. And so as we now turn to page 371, we think of all of those who are in need of healing. In our community, we're thinking of Sarah Golub and Louise Chapman, Anthony Barnes and Mary Spriggs, Marcella Wilson and her family, Jim Hardy and Max Cohn, Leanne Edwards and Winifred Halsey, Joan Stockhoff and Hildy Leibowitz, Heidi Hobbs and Gordon Campbell, Daniel Weinzierl and Luba and Costa Ritsetsky, Justo Gonzalez Jr. and Carlos Taberes, Marcella Wilson, Mark Gotthelf, Thelma Spill, Sharon Schwartz and Rick Marco, Marion Kramer, Susan Levine, Lael Lubing, and Jonathan Spitz, and Elaine Baddock, and Javier Escalante, Ruth Oppler and Flo Bernberg, and the Miller family, Deborah Willage, and Lori Deitz, Jeanette Ponder, and Gabrielle Ben-Yeshia, Deborah Bader, Kyle Beach, Holly Montalbano, Taryn Vaughn and Greg Sessler, Devorah Kaufman, Rick and Marianne, Tammy Mormino, Dennis Tassi, Lori Barish, Howard Nagelberg and Bart Barish, Eric Levin, Liviana Bree Soltzer, Chuck Abrams, Myrna Kaufman and Suzanne White Smith, Candy Dollar, Candy Roller, and Deborah Siegel, Caleb and June, and A. Sarah Kaplan. We hold them in our hearts as we sing the words of Misha Berach. Misha Berach,
when you drop the sermon on the floor, that's why you number the pages. It's one of the main things I learned in rabbinical school. What is the best viral video? Obviously, there is not a correct answer to that question. But one of my favorites is the one from last spring of the lawyer who couldn't figure out how to change his Zoom settings. His daughter had set his Zoom filter so that whoever was using it, their face would look like a cat. Who saw this? Did everybody? Okay, a decent number of you. So this lawyer couldn't figure out how to turn the filter off. And so he had to begin his virtual trial and his opening statement with an enormous cat plastered over his face. The video went viral in every sense of the term. It was shared widely, watched by millions, written about by every news outlet, and it even made it into our own Temple Sholom virtual Purim spiel. Something about this video sticks with me. It just brings me joy. And so whenever I remember it, I giggle to myself. Living through the pandemic has added a whole level of meaning to the expression to go viral. We understand that when videos and stories go viral, for lack of a better word, they infect us. There's something about them that sticks with us and fundamentally affects, even if just for a short time, our experience of the world. This viral effect of information obviously has a flip side, where through our consumption of news and media, we are regularly forced to encounter tragedy in a viral way. Last week in San Francisco, my family was sitting together as the news of the tragedy in which Alec Baldwin shot a gun that he didn't know was loaded and accidentally killed the cinematographer, Helena Hutchins. We were in the living room as the notification popped up on our phones, and we proceeded to spend the next 30 or so minutes Googling the news stories and reading in shock and fascination and sadness, sitting together in the tragedy of it all. I bring up this story not to add to the level of sensationalism around it, but because something about the horror of it all made me think about how do we deal with the weekly dose of disaster that we passively digest when we encounter the news? How can we acknowledge that we take in tragedy on a global scale, sometimes every morning? What does that do to our relationship to suffering? And what do we do with the emotions that come up as we read those horrible stories? There are no perfect answers, but I personally found the framework of the writer and theologian Nadia Bolz-Weber to be helpful. Bolz-Weber describes us as having emotional circuit breakers. And she says that our emotional circuit breakers are a little bit outdated because our hardware was built for a different time, a time before we could, in one day or in a few days, follow the unfolding events of the Alec Baldwin and Helena Hutchinson story, while also taking in the news of another mass shooting in Boise, while also the Ahmaud Arbery trial begins, while also memorializing the 3rd anniversary of the Pittsburgh Tree of Life shooting, while also. Our emotional circuit breakers are outdated, and so they sometimes short. And we can't handle all of the tragedy that comes our way. And we begin to feel numb about the news, about the stories that we read. Abraham in this week's Parsha gives us ancient wisdom on facing grief when our circuit breakers are overwhelmed.
This week's Torah portion, Chaye Sarah, which means the life of Sarah, is all about Abraham's grief around Sarah's death. The Torah tells us that after Sarah dies, Abraham mourns Sarah and he bewails her. It uses two words, lispod, to mourn, which can also be understood as to eulogize, and livkotah, to bewail. And it seems at first glance like this word, livkotah, could just mean to cry. But there's something about the writing and the grammatical structure that tells us that it's a little more intense than crying. It's a bewailing. What does it mean to bewail? To me, it's the truth that when we confront these losses, we don't let them pass us by. We take time to talk about them, to mourn them, to say, this is horrible, not for the purpose of interest or fascination, but to sit in the question, God, why do we live in a world with both horrible accidents and preventable losses? To bewail is to center and pour out our grief, to honor our shock, to refuse to let loss become normal in our day-to-day lives. Of course, bewailing has its limits. We don't want to be in a constant state of mourning. In fact, it's not possible in order to maintain the energy to respond to the needs of our time. And so Bowles-Weber suggests asking ourselves 3 questions. She says we should ask ourselves when we're reading these stories, what's mine to do and what's not mine to do? What's mine to say and what's not mine to say? What's mine to care about and what's not mine to care about? We ask ourselves these questions not to shut ourselves off from the world or to brush these things off and say, we just don't care, but to be thoughtful about the time and attention and the ways in which we ingest news in order to protect our ability to bewail. Our emotional circuit breakers are outdated, but we can gradually improve them using both the ancient wisdom of Abraham and the modern wisdom of Bowles-Weber. We can bring care, we can bring presence, and we can bring love to these stories and to everything that the people we know and the people that we don't know deserve. Shabbat Shalom. We take a moment now for some announcements, for some exciting things happening in our community close to home. So, this is very exciting. On Saturday, November 13th, there is going to be a 40s and 50s Chicago pizza tour, but the deadline to register is this Sunday, October 31st. And so if you want to come eat incredible pizza with people in their 40s and 50s, please register by this Sunday.
And starting Monday, November 1st from 7 to 9 p.m. is going to be the beginning of a 2-part series for our monthly film nights through our adult education department. This month's film will be Once Upon a Time in America. And so this coming Monday, November 1st, will be part 1, and part 2 will be watched on November 15th.
And on Wednesdays, you should not miss the opportunity to join with Rabbi Conover for an Israel Matters Wednesday morning study group discussion that is going to be using, I know, a lot of really fantastic resources to dig very deeply into how do we think and talk about Israel.
And I'm looking forward to the Mini Solomon of Blessed Memory, the book club in her name. Our monthly book club will be on Thursday, November 4th. So next Thursday at 11. And we are going to discuss Waking Lions by Ayelet Gunder Goshen.
And then next week, 3 special Shabbat services. The first one at 5:15, November 5th, I know that I can be very overwhelming and a little bit scary.
Never.
But, I love the little kids. And, I'm pretty good with them. You'd be surprised. So at 5:15 with Helena, who's better with kids than anybody else in the world, and Jamie, of course, who's amazing, are going to be doing a virtual Shabbat celebration called Share the Light Shabbat. And then we have our Veterans Day Shabbat service at 6:15. So please join us here. And then on Zoom, please join myself and Rabbi Singer. Will you be with me for Or Chadash? Who's going to join me for Or Chadash?
I think that's going to be Rabbi Gelman. Can you believe we'll be back from parental
Who's
leave
Rabbi
next
Gelman?
week? We're
Yeah,
so excited.
Just kidding.
It's not, it might be me. There's going to be a rabbi
gonna be a
there.
rabbi.
Oh, there's going to be a rabbi and a cantor there.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Always answer. At 7:45, that'll be virtual for our Or Chadash service, which is our LGBTQ plus community, not to be missed as well.
Well, cantor and rabbi, I just want to know if somebody attends all three services, do they get extra points somewhere?
No, just
do they get
super
a
Jew
prize?
status.
Yeah, in the world to
Super Jew
come.
status. Yeah, I love it.
All right, we are going to rise and turn to page 586 for our closing prayer, Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol l'tefilah liyotzeh bereshit shalo asanu k'goyei ha'aratzot ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, לגורלנו ככל המונה. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We take time now to think about those whom we're missing and whom we've lost in the last week, in the last month, in the last year, in previous years at this time. And I also want to add a special note that in the last week, not just our synagogue, but all of the synagogues, I believe all of this, many, many synagogues in Chicago have been gathering to discuss loss from eating disorders. And to recognize that we lose way too many people in this community and in all communities to eating disorders. And I know that we've done programs with teenagers, we've met as clergy, and that we're going to continue to shine a light on that very, very important issue. And to say that if you are somebody who would like to discuss eating disorders, any of us clergy are here to be with you and to connect you to great resources. But we also just take the time to mourn those who have been lost to eating disorders in this year and in previous years. And we have names of those who we are remembering this week at Temple Sholom. And we are remembering Beatrice Schlesinger, Ginny Mancini, Maria del Carmen Romero, Maureen Betancourt, Florence Barbara Solomon, Sandy Ottenstein, Magda Slowick, Gail Rothner, Phyllis Ackerman, Maxine Jason, Howard V. Hahn, Sandra Goincher, and Aidan Woolman, as well as Edward Fox, Lois Berman, Judith Frank. We also remember the yahrzeits of Erwin Blitt, Mindy Chapman, Dr. David Kornbleet, Ben Drobny, June Frankel, Ethel Ganbarg, Gilbert Greenfield, Max Grossfeld, Lois Granoff, Arthur Kaplan, Laurel Krulowich, Ruth Lash, Meta Lesser, Mark Levy, Leo Lichtenberg, Charlotte McCumber, Jim Malkin, Francis Mills, Mary Oppenheim, Donald Paul, Eileen Quinn, Pamela Rehasek, Philip Ribet, Barbara Helene Rich, Eleanor Schiffer, Beatrice Schlesinger, Raymond Shannon, Barry Sloan, Florence Smith, Florence Barbara Solomon, Lois Sulzer, Lois Werhane, Elaine Superfine, and Tamara Schwartzman. May their memory be for a blessing. We turn to the Mourner's Kaddish on page 591.
98.
598.
Yitkadal,
Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Ba'alma Divrat Hirite V'amlich Malchute, V'chayachon Uvyomechon, V'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, V'agala Uvizman Kari V'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam Ulamei Almaya. Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh. V'yitadar V'yit'aleh V'yithalal Shemei D'Kudsha B'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata. Ta'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehi shlema rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Useh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Oseh
Shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Arden, are you going to come back tomorrow? You could be seated for a moment. We began with just a simple nigun, a song without any specific words, Lai, I've come to call this Ethan's nigun because you brought it, and I thought there would be no other better way to welcome you back from your honeymoon than to do your nigun.
Shabbat Shalom. May we find
Shalom.
peace, rest, and comfort this Shabbat. It's wonderful to be with you all.
Shabbat Shalom.